Good morning, I'm Adam Sexton. Governor Chris Sununu's endorsement of Nikki Haley could be another rocket booster on the presidential candidate's already upward trajectory, or it might be a big splash followed by a return to the reality of former President Donald Trump's massive lead in the polls. We don't know how it's going to work out. We do know Haley and Sununu are going to be doing everything they can to make it count and to win. And they join us in studio this morning. Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much. Get excited. The momentum's real.
Let's start with you, Ambassador Haley. And the excitement here is dying down, and it's back to let's get to work, essentially. So tell us, how are you going to deploy Governor Sununu on the campaign trail when you're not here?
Well, you know what I love is the fact that this isn't just about a one and done, do one event and say, hey, I'm with you. I mean, he really is fighting for our country as much as I'm fighting for our country. So when I'm not here, he's going to continue to campaign. We're going to do this as a partnership. This is about how do we earn every Granite Stater's vote and put in the work and the time. And so when I happen to be in Iowa or South Carolina, he's pounding the pavement in New Hampshire. When I come back, we're going to do it together. We're going to continue to make sure we touch as much of New Hampshire as we can. I mean, look, he knows how to do it. He's the coolest governor in the country for a reason. People love him and trust him because he gets it. He gets the fact that you got to touch those voters. You got to talk to them. You got to make sure that they get all their questions answered. He's going to help me do that.
And Governor, you said in making your decision, you noted there was a different level of energy and excitement around Governor Haley's campaign than you saw with the other candidates you were with. Why do you believe it's going to be enough to catch up to former President Donald Trump?
Well, most folks will make the decisions in the last 6 weeks, and that's really where we are. So we're kind of in that crunch time where folks are really engaging. Every town hall we go to, it's almost everybody in the room is new. So these aren't the same old people or something like that. It's every time you go out, it's a whole new crop of folks that are getting excited, they're getting interested. And again, when it comes to, Ambassador Haley, we share a brand, right? We just want to be genuine. This is who we are. We don't, unapologetically, we'll give you the straight answer. And we're not trying to convince folks that, as a public official, my answers are the right way and you have to just, I'm going to tell you what you want to hear. You have to agree with us. It's about saying, what are your issues, right? What are the issues from the people? What's your story? And being able to take that and understand where that is, being genuine about a response to it, and earning trust. It's all about trust in New Hampshire. She spent a ton of time here. She's going to keep spending time here. We're going to be out campaigning. She's going to have the strongest ground game in the state. All of these things kind of match up with the energy as it flows into January 23rd. You're going to she's been obviously as a strong conservative that isn't scary to the other side and all that sort of thing. People are excited, and I think you're going to see a record turnout on January 23rd. All that adds up to, I think, a big win for Nikki.
And Ambassador, at your events, those voters who come out, invariably we hear that question, gosh, why aren't you tougher on President Trump? And you've said all the time that you're critical when you need to be and complimentary when you need to be. But if this does turn into a one-on-one matchup, are you ready to accept the challenge of direct confrontation with Trump?
Absolutely. I want to see him and be with him on a debate stage. I want to make sure we have that opportunity. I want to make sure that voters know what their options are. I mean, the reality is, I think President Trump was the right president at the right time. I agree with a lot of his policies. But the issue that we're dealing with now is the reality that chaos follows him. And we can't have a country in disarray and a world on fire and go through 4 years of chaos. You don't defeat Democrat chaos with Republican chaos. And when we go out there, people want to talk about the economy. They want to talk about education. They want to talk about what's happening on the border. They're nervous and they're tired. And what I want to do is pick up the reins and say, you know what? Government's going to start working for you again. We're going to get out of your life. We're going to make government small. We're going to start to pay down the debt. And we're going to give our children some hope that there's a better future out there. They deserve that. And we do it by telling people the truth. They're tired of getting the sound bites and the peacocking and all of that stuff. They just want to know the hard truth. And I think that the people of New Hampshire deserve the truth, but they can handle the truth. And so that's what we've done. And they love the honest conversations that we have. And we're going to keep working this. Get used to this face, because we're going to keep working it until we get every single vote.
And Governor Sununu, one of the messages you've been using out on the trail since you made the endorsement is that you think this is a two-person race now. We were just interviewing Chris Christie earlier. He said, hold on a second, not so fast. I'm not going anywhere. Does Governor Haley need his block of voters to win? And how much work are you going to do to try to peel them off and convince them to join you?
Yeah, well, again, I think a lot of folks are still undecided on this one. And New Hampshire wants it to be narrowed down. It is going to be narrowed down. It is a two-person race between Nikki Haley and Donald Trump. And even Trump voters, I think, are realizing, we might have supported him 16 and 20, as we did. But we're results driven. We want accountability with our elected officials. So inflation is crushing families across this country. Here in New Hampshire, right, the border needs to be secured, and you need a president that's going to give 120% of their time, without the distractions, without the chaos, without this legal meringuing that's going to go on for years and years for the former president. He's going to have to deal with that. Whether you agree that it should have happened or not, that doesn't matter. He's just going to have to deal with it. But we need a president, if we're going to get the country back on track, that is laser focused on this stuff, that can work with Congress, no matter what hand they're dealt. Democrat, Republican, Congress, we don't know what it's going to be. Leadership gets it done every time. Real leadership can get that done. That's what Nikki brings to the table. As a former governor, that, you know, obviously we're quite connected in that because there's accountability in that. There's a sense of customer service in that. Imagine having that in the White House, a real sense of the individual comes first, of customer service comes first, as opposed to just 30,000 feet, you know, worrying about the policy. It's implementation and results-driven leadership. That's going to galvanize this whole country together.
Ambassador Haley, Governor Christie keeps criticizing you on the issue of abortion, saying you're trying to have the issue one way in Iowa and another way in New Hampshire, essentially with a more conservative message in Iowa for socially conservative voters, and then a more nuanced message here in New Hampshire, which is a little bit more pro-choice. Obviously, this is a complex issue post-Dobbs, and there are different realities in different states, but how can you be a consistent pro-life conservative and accept that blue states can have abortion on demand?
You know, I've been so consistent on that. Chris says that, but he's not acknowledging the fact I was asked two different questions. So the first question was, if your state of South Carolina, if the people decided they wanted a 6-week, you know, abortion bill, would you go along with it? Of course, you support what the people want. I would do that. But if it's a federal law, we have to have the reality that the only way we're going to get anything done is through consensus. So I wish every state was pro-life. I'm unapologetically pro-life. But guess what? Those states that are going pro-choice, the people decided, and I respect that, and that's where it should be. It should be in the hands of the people. When it comes to a federal law, let's focus on how do we save as many babies as we can and support as many moms as we can. And we do that with consensus. You can't get a law without 60 Senate votes. So let's get consensus on just banning late-term abortions, on encouraging adoptions, on making sure contraception is accessible, to make sure that no woman who gets an abortion goes to jail or gets the death penalty. Let's be consistent on that. That's what I've said from the very beginning. I'm not going to demonize this issue. I'm going to humanize it. And the fellas have not known how to talk about this. I do know how to talk about it because I know it's personal for every woman and every man, and it needs to be treated with the respect it deserves.
On energy, Ambassador Haley, if you're the president, how much of President Biden's green energy plan do you retain?
It's interesting because when I was at the United Nations, Russia, China, and Iran never wanted us to have two things. They never wanted us to have a strong military, and they never wanted us to be energy independent. We will be energy dominant. We will make our energy sector an economic powerhouse. We'll get the EPA out of the way. Right now, they worry more about sagebrush lizards than they do about people affording their power bill. We'll make sure that we speed up permitting. We'll make sure we partner with our producers. We'll do the Keystone Pipeline. We'll export as much liquefied natural gas, and we will roll back every bit of Biden's green subsidies, because that's not doing any of us any good. We're going to start focusing on small businesses, on our economy, on energy, and making sure that people feel like they've got that economic freedom.
And if I may, you know what comes from that? Inflation. Energy is one of the biggest drivers of inflation when it comes to food costs, transportation costs. All of this is driven around energy, and Biden just ignores it completely. So all these families, Republican, Democrat, Independent, everyone feels inflation the same way. So to have that energy independence and to make it a driver of our economy as opposed to something we're almost fearful of on a political issue, that's really the answer. Everything starts really coming in line when you do that. It doesn't mean you don't do we have solar and wind and all these amazing hydro projects. These are great projects. They'll all continue.
Well,
it's an all above.
If you're going to roll it back, does that mean canceling the offshore wind project for here in New Hampshire?
Well, I think what you want to look at is we want all types, right? We want as much energy as we can. We're not going to play favorites in deciding which one's better than the other. We want them all. And you do whatever it takes to have them all. The problem, if you look at Biden's green subsidies, is here you had basically mandating people to have electric cars by 2030. We don't even have the infrastructure for that. And I'm not talking about charging stations. Electric vehicles are heavy. Our roads and bridges couldn't handle it. You can't go and force people to do something you want them to do in the name of environment. People don't respond well to that. What you can do is give them information. You can let them make the decision for themselves. And what Biden has done is he's focused too much on what the U.S. isn't doing. And what he should be doing is focusing on what India and China are doing, which is continuing to produce coal plants over and over and over again and not doing anything about their emissions. That's where our focus should be if we care about the environment.
Ambassador Haley, you're a trailblazer in the sense that you're the first woman of color ever elected governor of any of the 50 United States. The first woman of color elected mayor of Boston just held a segregated holiday party for, quote, electeds of color. Invitations were mistakenly sent to city councilors who were white and then rescinded. From your experience and perspective, and you experienced racism in your family, did experience racism growing up in South Carolina, is the mayor being divisive, or is she just lifting up certain people and cultures and people are overreacting?
Not healthy at all. Not anything that we should have. You know, when you said I grew up and faced racism, and we did. We grew up in a small rural southern town. We were the only Indian family. We weren't white enough to be white or black enough to be black. And when I would get teased on the playground, my mom would always say, your job is not to show them how you're different. Your job is to show them how you're similar. The problem we have in the country right now is people are constantly trying to label and divide everyone. We're Americans. Can't we get back to that? Can't we start acting like that? We're mothers, sisters, daughters, all of these things that make us united, that's what we should focus on. You don't split people up based on how they look or what religion they are or what gender they are. I mean, that's not America, and that's what we have to stop. This national self-loathing that's happened in the country has happened because too many people are dividing us on labels. It's a terrible example for our kids, and it's got to stop. We'll put an end to all of that, and she should be called out. There's no good in having any kind of party that separates people on race. That is not the America we live in, and she shouldn't be leading like that.
And quickly, Governor, given that division, why do you believe America is ready for the first woman president?
Look, I think America's ready for a president that gets stuff done, right? And I mean, I think it's exciting that we have a mom, the wife of a service member, someone who's part of a military family, who's experienced so much. That brings the experience as a governor, someone from the United Nations, given all that we're having. That full package, and then you add the fact that she brings that, if you will, the sensibility, the understanding, the caring, the ability to listen, and most importantly, just being genuine, right? If you want to talk about Nikki as a mom, moms are who they are, unapologetically, right? And I think that's exactly what this country is looking for. No nonsense, no falsehoods, just this is where we are and this is where we're going as a country. And that's exciting. Like I said, that's why you're seeing all this energy and all this enthusiasm over the next few weeks.
It's not about being the first woman, it's about being the right woman. And I will tell you, I think the fellas have done it for a while. It's time that we get a badass Republican woman in the White House.
Governor Sununu, Ambassador Haley, thank you for joining us.